Coaching Seminar 3. Thank you for joining us for the third of our series of coaching seminars focusing on continued growth and learning for coaches. Mark Stewart joins us for this topic. If and when you should transition an athlete to another coach. It can be a very hot topic, can be a very contentious topic too, and it's great to have Mark on board. So Mark spans many decades in athletics as an athlete, a coach. In his specialist area, which is the pole vault, Mark has guided athletes at all levels, including a number of Australia's best. Emma George, Steve Hooker, Bridget Isworth, Blake Lucas, just to name a few. An integral part of Australian pole vault community, Mark has been involved in transitioning his own athletes and those of other coaches to the Athletics Australia High Performance Program based in Perth. And by utilising the expertise of others, Mark's also implemented athlete contracts, which is something else that we're going to talk about in this particular seminar. So Mark Stewart, welcome to the seminar, and here we go.
Thanks very much, Tim. Thank you for the great introduction. Yes, what I'll do tonight is talk just about my experiences and let people make of it what they may, and I'm keen to get people's feedback. As you probably many of you know, I spent time quite a long while being a national junior pole vault coach, worked for Athletics Australia, and I found the best way of doing that was not to go around telling people what they should be doing, but to tell people, well, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it. What do you think about that? And let people adopt it as they may. And I'm going to ask for more feedback. And I will even say this at the front. I know there's a lot of people out there who have some experience in something I want to pick people's brains on a bit, because most of you know I work at a university, but it looks very likely that I won't be working there for in the new year, given the state of things in tertiary education. And after almost 30 years at RMIT, I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up not being there fairly soon. And one of the things I'll be wanting to do is to try to make my coaching a bit more of a business. And I don't, and so I'm going to pick a few people's brains. So just, you're on notice, a few of the people out there.
Mark, I think Tilly and I might be looking at that potentially down the road as a bit of a seminar. You've just given us a really, really, really good topic, because I think that you're not on your own with changed work conditions and uncertainty about future. So Tilly, I think we should be jotting that one down. And that's the thing, Mark, that as an industry, we should also be looking at this, because it will be a very relevant topic. So I know we've gone off a little bit off topic to start, but I think it's a very, very worthwhile thing for us to be addressing as Athletics Victoria.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll be coming to that seminar 100%. I've got to learn all about the things. All right, now the thing, there's many aspects to this topic, but I'll just talk about the first one, which you can see on the top here. It says the commitment of the athlete and the coach. And that is really the key question in terms of transition. If you want to coach an elite athlete, or if you are going to be coaching an elite athlete, that requires huge commitment on your behalf. It requires you to spend enormous amounts of time, and you have to upskill all of the time as well. Now, usually, I don't think most people go out there and say, I'm going to coach an elite athlete. What usually happens is they are coaching, they've got some level of involvement, and a good athlete shows up. And then what happens is the coach has a series of decisions to make. Do I want to try and grow with this athlete, or does the athlete have to go somewhere else? And if they want to grow with the athlete, that is, they want to go on the same journey as them, and that I think is always the best way to go if you can. Obviously, doesn't suit everybody's circumstances, because it does require time and effort and all these sorts of things. Then you have to allocate more time and effort to learning these things. You've got to go and do a strength and conditioning course. You've got to learn how things operate in Europe if they're going to do this. You've got to get a manager. You've got to spend a lot more time learning about the medical things like this. You've got to build a team around the athlete if that's what you want to do. And if you cannot do that, then it makes sense that the athlete has to go somewhere else. And many people can't do it because we have careers and families and all of these sorts of things, which is going to stand in the way. Now, you can see the first quote there. Coaches have many careers, athletes have only one, which was Elwyn said at the last seminar. Really good seminar. Really enjoyed listening to that. And that's completely true. So then the next phrase, which comes after that, is the performance of the athlete is paramount. And that is true as well. But it ignores the fact that coaches have egos. And they do. And we wouldn't do this unless we did. And it's not, you know, you're not going to just say, oh, you're not completely selfless in the whole process. If you think you can take the athlete to a level, you want to be involved in that sort of thing. The other thing is the next line, a great athlete can make a coach. And that is completely true as well. But you can't have a great athlete unless you are also a great coach. So you've got to be prepared to skill yourself up to that sort of level. And then, I mean, one of the things that happens, of course, is other athletes, if you've got a good athlete, the other athletes, oh, he must be a good coach. You know, athletes are not they're young, they're not experienced. That's the way they think. Now, the other process thing is that there is always going to be full-time, well, there are full-time professional coaches. In my event, there's always been full-time professional coaches in Australia, at West Australian Institute of Sport or South Australia, even in Sydney as well, there is a full-time coach, pole vault coach as well. And then the other thing is there is also the college system in America, which is another opportunity for people and an excellent opportunity for people to experience and change and grow and get their degree without necessarily a HECS debt and all this sort of stuff. So these things are important to consider. And you know, you can't ignore all of those things out there. Now, the thing that has helped me very much is having legally binding contracts with athletes that I've coached. A few athletes, not all athletes. And this is a contract where the athlete pays you a percentage of what they make as a professional athlete. That's what I'm talking about here. It has other benefits other than the fact that you get some money if they make some money. Most of the contracts I've had with athletes have resulted in very little or no money, but a few of them have resulted in quite a lot of money. Now, it's not all one size fits all. It doesn't necessarily make sense in every situation, but it's in my situation, it has helped me a lot. And why are contracts so important? Well, it's relating to that that thing at the bottom. When an athlete starts out, they're highly dependent on the coach. You are the coach. You have the knowledge. You have the ability to make them good. Once the athlete becomes an elite athlete, the coach is dependent upon the athlete. And you see that all the time. And there will be all sorts of other people who will want to get a piece of that athlete if they are very, very good. Some well-intentioned, some not, okay? Sycophants, all of this sort of thing. And it all gets it muddies the waters with these sorts of things. But a contract is really important, I think. Why is a contract important? Well, if the athlete is making, I mean, many people have verbal agreements with their athletes. If they make the money, they'll pay you a percentage of what they make or something like that. Verbal agreement's not satisfactory. Money always has the potential to cause problems. And if you have a contract, hopefully it will reduce the possibility of that sort of thing causing issues. Coaching an athlete is an investment. You don't undertake other investments without a contract. You do these with written contracts and legally binding situations. But as I said, contracts don't necessarily always make sense for every situation. For example, if you are employed at an institute of sport and you are being paid a full-time salary to coach an elite athlete, and you think you'll set up a contract with the athlete so if they make money, you make money, well, you better tell your employer about that before you start doing that. And it's very likely the employer will say, no, we're paying you to do this. This is what you get paid. But, you know, that's your situation. But I was in a different situation. I was not getting paid by anyone. It was just me and the athlete, or the athlete and I were trying to work things out. Okay, so maybe we go to the next slide, please, Tilly, if we could. Yeah, so what I'll do now is I'll just talk about the contracts, the story of how this all eventuated, and it's been a long period of time, actually. Now, I was very lucky because I started coaching Emma George at the beginning of women's pole vaulting, and she broke the world record heaps and heaps of time, and she made a lot of money, like really serious amounts of money. I didn't have a proper contract with her. But we had an agreement which she always honoured, and so that worked fine. But then the next elite female vaulter I coached was Bridget Isworth, who she won a bronze medal at the Com Games in 2002 in Manchester, and then she went off to America to go to college. Now, her father, Bernard Isworth of Isworth and Associates, who eventually became my family lawyer, we talked about all of this. And so he drew up a contract between Bridget and I. In fact, it wasn't between Bridget and I, it was between her parents and I, because Bridget was a minor at this time. And so it had to be between that. And then it reverted to being between Bridget and I once she signed it and turned 18. Now, it was a detailed document. It involved a lot of detail, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. And I've used some template of this since then with those athletes listed, well, Bridget and Steve, and I think I looked it up actually, there was 7 other athletes I've had written contracts with over this time. Now, I don't do it with everybody. I only am going to set this up and go through this process if I think they have some chance of making some money. However, every athlete I coach, I send an invoice to them 3 times a year for what says polls and coaching fees. And it has a clause in that, and it says, it is usual to pay your coach 10% of your pole vaulting income. And everyone does that. Now, usually what we're talking about is they might win a few $100 at the Steigen or the Diamond Creek Fair or something like that. So we're not talking large amounts of money, but everybody does that, and they would be expected to do that. And everyone knows that's what's going on. But if we do have people who go overseas and make a bit more money, then obviously they would have to pay a bit more. Now, I will talk quickly about Steve Hooker. We set up a contract, I'm not quite sure of the years, but I have a situation where they pay me a percentage while I coach them, which is called the contract period. And then for the equivalent period after I stop coaching them, it's called the post-contract period, they also pay me, but a reduced percentage. So that they pay me while I'm coaching them, and then they're paying me a trailer, if you like, off into the future. Now, I think Steve, it was set up so that we signed the contract probably maybe 2002. I coached him. In 2006, he won the Commonwealth Games. At the end of 2006, he was ranked #1 in the world. And but at that time, he was a full-time professional pole vaulter. He was wanting to spend lots of time traveling and all this sort of stuff. I had a young family, a career. It wasn't possible. And there was full-time coaching on offer with Alex Parnov in Western Australia. And so that made sense. Now, I didn't want him to go, I can promise you. That wasn't what I wanted, but I could see that was the situation. And anyway, but what I'll say is, so Steve would have been paying me for like 4 years after he left. However, he came back to me and said, I'm really good. I'm going to keep making money for years into the future. You've sent me off here. Everything I've done was with you. And so you should get paid as long as I'm making money as a pole vaulter. He didn't have to do that. And I always tell everyone this because it's a testament to his character and his upbringing and all of those sorts of things. And so we went back to Bernard. He redrew up the contract, and I think it went for 20 years, like into the future. So he did that. Now, the other thing was, this contract meant that I was heavily invested in his outcomes. He was also continually in contact with me, as Alex Parnov was as well. We would talk all the time, texts and whatever, comps and all this sort of thing. And it made a huge difference to me. Whereas, of course, we've seen many times before, when an athlete leaves a coach, the coach wants them to fail. But it never happened in this situation. And for my situation, that's why it made so much of a difference. Now, the contract has all sorts of stuff in it. The athlete's income is defined clearly as it's income earned from the sport of pole vaulting. It's not from doing other stuff. It has responsibilities for the coach. The coach has to write written programs, has to attend training and competition where practical. It has responsibilities of the athlete, that they have to train, that they can't be coached by someone else, and a whole range of different things. The coach has the power to have the athlete's finances audited by an independent auditor because that's important to can't conceal income. Quarterly payments, like any contract would have that. Like, they say, because if someone says we owe you money and they say, yeah, I'll pay you, and they never do, obviously you've got to have some way of ensuring that's the case. And it has this contract period, which is the period I'm coaching them for, and then the equivalent period afterwards. Now, I can advise on this, or Bernard could advise. I can't just send the contracts around and let people do it because it has confidentiality clauses. I'm not quite sure what Bernard's retired, but and I was meaning to try and talk to him a bit about it. But yeah, he has certainly helped people in the past with these sorts of things, as I have as well. Now, what I might just do, I think if we go to the next slide, it's probably okay. Now, this is just another little thing that I thought I'd bring into this before we open things up. And one of the things that has happened is that we're trying to set up a thing called the Pole Vault Coaches Network, which is an initiative of the West Australian Institute of Sport and Athletics Australia. Now, at the moment, WACE operates a pole vault program. It has 2 full-time coaches, Paul Burgess and James Fitzpatrick, and they're good friends of mine, and we've been working on this together just recently. Now, they are completely aware that unless the WACE pole vault program continues to produce internationally successful pole vaulters, like elite pole vaulters, it will cease to operate, and they'll have to find something else, some other way of making money, okay, because they'll be the end of their jobs. They also are pretty aware that they're unlikely to find enough international pole vaulters or enough potential just wandering around in the streets of Perth anywhere. So they're aware of the fact that they're going to, if they're going to be successful, they've got to be open to have people moving there because they've got, a full-time program and great facilities and all of this sort of stuff. So they want to, and they are also aware that sometimes this sort of thing hasn't been handled all that well in the past. So they've got this network, and we've produced a document, and it's been in conjunction with Athletics Australia and the coaching people at coach education at Athletics Australia. And we're going to set up a portal and all of this sort of thing. And it will involve education, which we will do for coaches, like this sort of thing that we're doing here at Athletics Victoria, but similar, but more specifically for pole vaulters. And we'll probably aim to get people from overseas as well, which is much easier in this COVID-19 world where we can communicate with it. We're all getting much better at this. Collaboration. We're going to have AA is going to fund 2 camps a year. We're going to have our first one in November, but I don't think the West Australian Premier is going to let anyone go over there, not from this state at least. So I think that's actually not going to happen now, but we will do it in the new year, hopefully. One of the big things they've been talking about is international competition. See, one of the things that often happens is you get an athlete on a team, but you can't go to the competition for all sorts of practical reasons. And so we want to make sure that people are supported, like the vaulter is supported on these competitions as well. And the other thing is they want to have is a policy, a clearer policy, which we have more or less in terms of athlete relocation and trying to ensure that the former coach is completely recognised in the process and also is rewarded with some sort of contract. Now, to me, it's much better to set the contract up before someone's about to leave, because of course there's no reason to do that at that point from the point of view of the athlete. But this is something that we're trying to set up, and so we'll watch this space for the pole vault people, and we're trying to establish that. And so they've got me involved in doing this, but this is in terms. And I understand what's going on. I want Australia to keep having international success of pole vaulters. I don't think you necessarily have to always move to this place, but if like Athletics Australia will often want an elite athlete to move to where they've got full-time coaches, because then they don't have to worry about the coach they've got in where, the personal coach, and it all costs them money. So, but anyway, look, that's essentially what I wanted to say, Tim. So if you could want to ask some other.
Yeah, I'll lead off with some questioning, Mark. Maybe let's focus on Steve Hooker initially. What were some of those precursor sort of signs that, apart from the fact that he was going to travel and you didn't necessarily have that opportunity, were there other sort of precursors or little hints or things that you thought, okay, it might be time that even though you didn't want him to leave you as a coach, that it might have been a necessity for him to go?
Oh, look, it was it does happen. Athlete-coach relationships don't last forever in many cases. I mean, I have coached one athlete for, I don't know how, I'm trying to think. Joel Pocklington, I suppose I still coach him. He still shows up and jumps. I mean, that's 20 odd years, but you know, it's not the usual thing. And it was just that, and he's also wanting something else. And as an athlete will be incredibly loyal to their first coach because they owe you so much, and they are, you know, people are like that, but they naturally will look for other things. You know, does this person know something better? Or the other big thing is training with a group, which I think is more of a bigger issue in terms of your events, Tim. Like, you know, they want to run with the better people and all this sort of stuff, that sort of thing. I mean, groups are very important. They're very important in all events. So yes, I could certainly see that it was going to be a problem with that sort of thing, but with Steve. But yeah, but traveling is a huge issue. More time, more commitment. And if you can't do that, and many people can't, you've got to think about what else you're going to do. You know, you've got to, you know, help them out.
Let's move on then to sort of the more grassroots level, because athletes do move between coaches. It can be handled very, very, very well. And in the case of, say, a hooker, I think that might have been the case, but I think we've all experienced on one side or the other where it doesn't move that or work that well. Have you had much experience in that? And if anything, is there sort of a checklist or a guidance for what you think the basic best points of moving an athlete from one coach to another? A little bit of a checklist.
Yeah, well, yes, I certainly have, and not necessarily. I mean, I'll be talking about elite athletes, but I've certainly had people come and go here and there. I mean, I think Kim Simons is here, and an athlete I coached is now coached. Well, I think still being coached by Kim in Adelaide. The key for any of this is communication, as far as I can see. I have had athletes come to me, and they will say, "Oh, you know, from some other coach, you know, would you coach me? Would you? I want to join your group, whatever." Now, the first thing I will say to them is, have you talked to your coach? And invariably they have not. And then I said, well, perhaps I should give them a call. And I will know all the coaches. It's not that big a bubble and big a group. And I will always do that. And we'll talk about it, what they want to do. Why do you want to leave? All of these sorts of things. And you know, and you've also, if someone does go somewhere else, you've got to continually explained, and I say this actually for the group all the time, I say, you know, if you stop training or whatever, still, we're all friends, you know, you've got to try and make sure that you keep in touch with everybody, you know, it's a big part of our lives. So that's really all I can advise, that talk to the coach. Don't go round and, well, I mean, the code of conduct from the, you know, athletics coaching code of conduct says that you can't go round and, you know, try to poach, or as the word, or anything like that, and don't do it. There's no need to do that. If you're a good coach, people will want to be coached by you. Now, you don't need to do that sort of thing. It's completely, you know, the athletes will work things out themselves. I don't think I've ever had anything to do with, you know, that sort of thing. And in fact, I'm sure that there was no deliberate poaching by the other coaches in terms of the athletes that that have left me either. You know, and I know them all well. We're still all friends. That's the important part of it.
I think we sort of experienced this at Athletics Victoria when athletes leave clubs, and a club might say, oh, no, we're going to stop the transfer. But our base response to that is, if the athlete wants to go, the athlete wants to go. Why would you possibly stop them? So I think this similar sort of situation occurs with coaching. Now, we have got limited time because it looks like our Zoom Pro license isn't really working on us. I think we've only got about 5 to 10 minutes left. That's right, Tilly. I'd welcome now any questions from the floor. If anyone wants to chip in and give us ask Mark a question in relation to this, or in relation to the contracts, or anything. And bear in mind too that Mark, you know, if people do need to contact him independently, get in touch with myself or Tilly, and we can forward his details if you don't have them. So if there's anyone want to ask any other questions from the floor. Got nice and quiet. It probably means you've done a very good
Yep, Peter Barrett here.
Hey, Peter. I can rely on you.
That's Mark. I remember way back when there was an ATFCA conference at Western Sydney. You first touched on this. It was a long time ago.
It was.
I I just think that from my experience, I had an athlete I coached, went to World Juniors, and she, through circumstances, ended up going to Peter Fortune, and I regularly had conversations with Peter Fortune because he's the ultimate professional. And I just think it's important that there is communication between the coach that had the athlete, that developed the athlete from a junior in a lot of cases to a senior, and then goes to another coach for various reasons. And too often do athletes go from one coach to another, and there's no sort of communication about what the idiosyncrasies of that athlete may be, their strengths and their weaknesses, and that sort of thing. And invariably, that sometimes the athlete doesn't improve if they go to another coach and there hasn't been communication. And I'm pretty pleased to hear what
I think what you're leading to there, Peter, is that there then has to be a process of relearning for the new coach. So all of that inherent knowledge that the existing coach has then has to be relearned. It leads me to one other little point, though, Mark, that I will ask you about. Is there a role for co-coaching? Does it have to be that you have to totally transition away? Can two coaches work? I interviewed Alex Hulley the other day on the podcast, and she has two coaches, Brianna and Karen. But then I'm also aware of a middle distance runner who tried this a few years ago and is an abject failure. So an opinion on co-coaching?
Well, I make use of, over the years, I've made use of other people to help with my coaching. I've had, strength and conditioning coaches separately. I've also have had Chris Falk, who you may remember. He also helped me with the running for many years as well, and other people like that. And so I certainly think, you know, especially when you're very time poor, that's certainly helpful. I think it's pretty tricky if you're going to have different, you've got to have one communication for those particular things. Like, I mean, I can remember we set up a protocol like for coaching at international events when I was a team coach, and then there was the personal coach. Now, the athlete can only hear one voice. So if you were a team coach, you could talk to the personal coach about, the personal coach, and you would have a discussion about what might to do. But you can't have two people saying things. I mean, it's hard enough to do something unless that's that sort of thing. So, I mean, I think you do have to be careful. You need to, the words have to come from from one voice, from one thing, and you can certainly consult, but you can't have multiple things going on all the time unless it's fairly segmented off. In terms of like strength and conditioning, running, pole vaulting, all of that sort of thing. I should say there's many reasons, good reasons why athletes will move coaches, and many of them, of course, is like Peter's just talking about, because, you know, he lives in a regional town and people move somewhere else. I mean, and then you've just got to talk to them about it and send them with your best wishes. That's just how it is, you know, and make sure that I would always send every program that the athlete's done and all of their testing results and all of these sorts of things to another coach. Would have any problem doing anything like that. So it's just about communicating, I think, is the key.
Mark, have you ever had an occasion where it was simply personality? You just did not get on with a person, or they didn't get on with you? Or are you just that likable that that's never happened?
I doubt that. I don't really remember that. I don't really remember anyone. I mean, we've had hotheads and all this sort of stuff over the years. I have had a few times where someone's done something and I have had to talk sternly, discipline, all of those sorts of things. So that certainly has happened about them. Usually if they're young, I will talk to the parents. In fact, not usually, always. I will talk to the parents if something has gone wrong. But if they're older, then I will do that. But I've had people, you know, as I said, different levels leave, not just the elite ones that I've been talking about today, for a variety of reasons. So it hasn't been a big issue.
Thanks, Mark. Well, it looks like our time is just about up. So a big thank you to Mark Stewart for giving us your time and putting the effort into this particular seminar. Thanks to Tilly once again, and thanks for those who have tuned in. And that's, I think, over and out there for topic number 3 of growth and continued learning as a coach.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming along. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.